Welcome. Good evening. Welcome. This is the Wednesday, August 10th meeting of the Silicon Valley Clean Energy Authority Board of Directors. And we welcome you here this evening in accordance with the California Government Code, Section 59953E, in consideration of the coronavirus. Members of the Silicon Valley Clean Energy Board and of Directors and staff have the option to participate in this meeting by teleconference. Members of the public may also attend this meeting in person or observe the meeting electronically by accessing the meeting via instructions provided on our webpage, I believe. Comments may be sent in advance. And let's see. Members of the public participating remotely and using Zoom may comment during the public comment or the applicable agenda item by using the raised hand feature, and you will be recognized by the chair. Those using the telephone or audio-only feature should press *9 on your phones to initiate the raise hand function in Zoom. You will then be announced, unmuted, and your time to speak will begin. The public may provide comments on any matter listed on the agenda. Speakers are customarily limited to 3 minutes each. However, the board chair may increase or decrease the time allotted to each speaker based on the number of speakers, the length of the agenda, and the complexity of the subject matter. Speaking time will not be decreased to less than 1 minute. And with that, we will begin our agenda with a call to order. May we have a roll call, please?
Yes, thank you. I will start with those who are attending in person. Chair Gibbons.
Here.
Vice Chair Tyson.
Here.
Director Abe Koga.
Here.
Attending remotely, we have Director Rennie.
Here.
Thank you. Director Chua.
Here.
Director Walia.
Here.
Director Klein.
Here.
Thank you. And give me just one moment while I check to see if we've had others that have joined us. Director Martinez Beltran. Martinez Beltran?
Here.
Thank you so much. And I will note that currently we have Director Lee, Director Elahi, Director Flieger, Director Armendariz, and Director Willie absent.
Hi, Andrea. It's Nisa. I just joined.
Thanks so much. And we do have a quorum.
Thank you for that. We will begin the meeting with a comment by the public on matters not listed on the agenda. The public may provide comments on any matter not listed on the agenda, provided that it is within the subject matter of the jurisdiction of Silicon Valley Clean Energy. Speakers are customarily limited to 3 minutes each. However, the board chair may increase or decrease the time allotted to each speaker. Speaking time will not be decreased to less than 1 minute. Madam Clerk, do we have any speakers from the public?
I see none.
All right. Seeing no comments during this time, we will close the public comment and move to the consent calendar. I have not had any requests to remove any items from the consent calendar. If anyone wishes to do so, please let me know. We are doing items 1A through 1M. Seeing none, is there a motion?
Motion to approve the consent calendar.
Second.
Second.
Okay. We have a motion by Director Abikoga, and I heard a second from Director, what's his name? Tyson. Thank you. I got the T, but I forgot the rest. It's been a long time since we've done meetings, and I just saw him. All right, so we have a motion and a second. May we have a roll call, please?
Yes, thank you. Chair Gibbons.
Aye.
Vice Chair Tyson.
Yes.
Director Abe Koga.
Aye.
Director Flieger.
Yes.
Rennie.
Aye.
Chua.
Aye.
Martinez Beltran.
Aye.
Walia. Walia.
Aye.
Thank you. Klein.
Aye.
Thanks. And I will notice that that carries.
Thank you very much. With that, we will now move to the regular calendar, which has 3 items on it: the CEO report, A next one, which is feedback on the proposed operating budget, followed by new construction reach code update. I'd like to take a moment to make sure that the members of the public realize that we have several closed-door sessions. So after we get through the regular calendar and board announcements, we will move to a closed-door session. There are, I think, 3 items in the closed-door session, and then we will rejoin this meeting to announce anything that is of relevance coming out of those closed-door sessions. So with that, thank you. And CEO Balachandran, how about having your update? You're muted.
You did say it's been a while since we've had these meetings. So, but I do have a track record of speaking while muted. Chair Gibbons, members of the board, welcome back to SVC board meetings after we took July off. It's great to see all of you, and wanted to welcome you back, welcome all the staff back, back to this monthly cadence of meetings. Unfortunately, as I've informed you, I'm unable to attend the meetings in person for a couple of months at least. And for today's meeting, after my CEO report, where I'll introduce a few new members of our staff and go through a couple of slides on our strategic plan. Monica Padilla, acting CEO, will be sitting in for me for the rest of the meeting. I'll join you for the closed session, for one of the closed sessions directly. So with that, I also wanted to mention that this was the week where we were all going to get together, all the staff. So you may have in the audience or in the office, folks who have come in from Houston, Southern California, and the Sacramento area too. And tomorrow, all staff will be meeting in departments during the day, and late afternoon, there's going to be some entertainment where everyone's getting together to do something outside and have some dinner. On Friday, there's going to be an all-day retreat where we're going to continue the work of developing our work plan and the interdependencies between each of the groups so that we can get you in a work plan in October. So we're going to have it in an outdoor setting. It's actually in Foothills Park in Santa Clara County, not in our service area. It's in Palo Alto, and everyone's looking forward to that. So with that, I'm going to change tacks and introduce 3 new employees who will be here today, who will speak to you. A 4th one couldn't make it today. So we'll start with Leslie Matarang, and she joined the SVC team as a marketing specialist in June, and she works for Pamela Leonard. So Leslie, would you please introduce yourself to the board?
Of course. Hello, board. I hope everyone's having a good Wednesday evening. I'm Leslie, and just to give you a little information about myself, before joining SVCE, I actually worked at Central Coast Community Energy as their marketing specialist, and I created campaigns and materials to launch their new energy programs. I managed some vendors to support marketing tactics and maintain their website. So it's very similar to my role here now as SVCE's marketing specialist. And I just wanted to come work for SVCE because I wanted to continue my work in the CCA industry and continue building a clean energy future. And I just saw a great opportunity with SVCE. SVC is super advanced in their tactics and technology, and they're very innovative. So I'm really happy to be working here. And just a little something about myself. In my free time, I really love doing self-care activities. I love bubble baths and skincare routines and making a really nice homemade dinner and just sitting by the TV and watching TV. And I also love painting. I'm pretty creative. Yeah, thank you.
Welcome, Leslie. We're delighted to have you, and I'm delighted with your background and experience that's going to contribute to Silicon Valley Clean Energy.
Thank you.
Next up in the lineup is Chris Van Vactor, who just joined us 2 days ago. And he'll be working in Monica's team. So Chris, could you please introduce yourself?
Hello, everyone. My name is Chris Van Vactor. I just started a couple days ago, as Garish said. I come from Southern California, Edison. I was there for 13 years. I've been in the energy industry for 20 years. But I've worked with kind of all aspects of CAISO, front office, back office, etc. Why did I want to work for SVCE? Well, it's really just the breadth of issues that this organization deals with. Kind of takes you outside of your comfort zone. I'm really looking forward to doing that. Something personal about myself, I make wine on the side. So every fall I go find grapes and make some wine, and hopefully it's good. Some years it isn't.
Well, that's great. Thank you so much, Chris. Delighted. And we know Charles had a say in having you invited to come join us. So thank you, Charles. I have a suggestion based on our dinner conversation that we should have the next all-hands meeting, put dog pictures on the wall and have a guess at whose dog belongs to whom.
Good idea. And just note that Chris will be reporting to Charles Grinstead. Next up and last would be a kind of a re-intro, someone who's taking on a new role for us, but quite familiar to the board. It's Colleen Mccammy. She's been with us for 3 years, and she is amazing when it comes, whether it's our website, communications, community outreach events, but she has some plans for the next year or so, but she'll continue to be working for us and she'll tell you about it. Colleen?
Great, thank you. Good evening, Chair, Vice Chair, and Board of Directors. Nice to see you all virtually. I'm excited to provide an update that I am currently pursuing a Master's of Environmental Data Science at the Bren School of Environmental Science and Management, and continuing to work part-time for Silicon Valley Clean Energy. So best of both worlds. And so in this one-year master's program, I'm excited to unlock data science skills and dive into clean energy questions through a data lens. And at the end of the program, I really aim to build creative data visualizations that connect communities to energy insights and help guide policies, encourage action, and amplify equitable solutions. That's kind of my goal at the end. And then while continuing to work for SVCE part-time during school, I am working on projects that enhance digital engagements, such as improvements to the websites and website navigation based on customer research, and applying the data visualization knowledge that I'm currently learning in school to projects at SVCE. Thank you.
Thank you, Colleen. It's delighted that you're able to still stay with us and share what you learn as you go, and really continue to make a difference with our community outreach. So thank you so much for that.
Thank you, Colleen. So I'd like to now switch to the last item I want to give you a quick update on, which is a customer-focused strategic plan. So in the last 5 years, as we developed our strategic plan, the focus of the strategic plan has essentially been the board and staff. It's actually a work plan. It's quite detailed. Each year, we try to kind of make it a little more friendly by, say, for example, talking about our strategic focus areas, make it high level. But when we presented this to the board in June, a member of the public gave us an idea in their public comment, talked about, hey, why don't you kind of look at your strategic plan from a customer standpoint, from a customer lens? So even though the current strategic plan is very useful to us from a work plan standpoint, we are going to put an overlay of what it would look like from a customer lens. And so if a customer is going to open this, how will they look at it? So if you can go to the next slide, I'm just going to show you a few things. So this is pretty much what I was talking about. Present the plan in a community and customer context, displaying it in a way that's easier for customers to understand, and also talking more about our community and customers. So next slide. So we have a strategic plan and we have our departments, right? So this is how we are organized. This is what our work plan tells us what each of us are going to do and the interdependencies between groups. But then when you get to that second blue row, we start to look at, well, what is decarbonization programs and policies, for example? What do they actually do? And so I think from a customer standpoint to look at it and be like, yeah, advancing fuel switching in buildings and transportation seems to be more understandable than decarbonization programs and policy. And we need both ways of looking at it. So this is a way of kind of splitting it up both in terms of functions and departments. So next slide. Go on one more slide, please. So this is just for example. We're not going to go into detail here. You'll see the final result in October. On the left-hand side was our October 2021, our current strategic plan. We had 21 goals. We're thinking, let's change it to these 5 functional areas that we have and categorize these goals underneath them so that when we talk about these goals, it's kind of looking at the value proposition that we bring to our customers, then the goals will be under each of those categories. Next slide. On the left-hand side here, again, the actual document will also be split in terms of these functional areas and what we are going to do and what value customers actually get. Next slide. And then there's going to be a section on our customers and our communities. So as you open the document, our current document, we don't really have much about our customers and communities. So we will have several pages about that. And so I think that's the last slide. Yeah. So board, this is just a preview of what we're working on. The whole team's going to be getting together on Friday and getting to the next level of the work plan. And then this was just to show you how it's going to be formatted for the September-October timeframe. So with that, actually, let me see. I just want to give kudos to Beth Trenchard and Don Bray, who put their heads together to come up with this format for the strategic plan. So thank you for that. Also wanted to thank Amrit, Monica, and the entire team for standing in for several weeks while I was away on vacation and now on a unplanned leave for the next few days. So thank you, Chair Gibbons, back to you.
Thank you very much. Appreciate that. Do we have any questions on the CEO's report from any member of the board? Seeing no hands raised, do we have any questions from any member of the public? I see no hands raised. And we will bring it back to the board. If there's any comment or discussion, this is for information, so no action is required. Anything? Well, thank you. I think we've been building up on the strategic plans, and I found the public comment and the relationship to our communities and our customers as really a viable comment, and I value very much how staff took that comment to heart and looked at how it will impact how we view our work and how we communicate our work. So thank you for that, and to everyone that Girish mentioned and the whole staff at being open to new information and thoughts. So thank you very much. Okay, we will now move on to our next item, which is the budget. Very important matter. And Amrit, are you going to be doing the honors here?
Yes, thank you, Chair Gibbons. I get to talk numbers now. So we're pleased to bring to you the proposed operating budget for the next fiscal year, which starts October of 2022 and ends in September of 2023. I'll go to the next slide, please. So this is a discussion only item. So what we're looking for is get the board's feedback on the proposed budget so that when we bring it to the board in September, the board is ready to adopt and approve the budget. There are 6 main areas I'm going to go through, somewhat in more detail than I will in September. We'll go through overview of what the budget looks like, the key components making up the budget, outlook on our revenue, our reserve targets. If you remember, we talked about how we were going to plan for reserves based on our stress test analysis at the last board meeting in June. The proposed customer discount and funding for programs, power supply costs, and other key cost drivers. That will go to the next slide. So in terms of the timeline, the way we started this budget process, at the June executive committee meeting, we laid out the framework and methodology for developing the budget with the executive committee. We got the committee's feedback and incorporated that. And during the month of July, we basically did the modeling work and developed the numbers. Then on August 1st, we presented in fairly detail the budget to the Finance and Admin Committee, and we incorporated their feedback. Some of that is reflected in the appendix in the slides. So today we bring it to you, the board, to get your feedback, any changes that you have, so we can incorporate that and bring it to you in September in a short version of this presentation, so that you're ready to adopt the budget along with the updated strategic plan. And in March, as we do in every year, we will have an opportunity to revisit and make any mid-year adjustments at that time. Okay, so we'll go to the next slide, Andrea. So the numbers look good the upcoming fiscal year, and it's mainly due to our revenues. We are seeing substantial increase in revenues relative to the current fiscal year. As you can see from the table, revenues are projected to increase by 25%, and I'll go into layers of details about uncertainty in this projection in the next few slides. But the main driver, if you look at year-over-year change, the 25% seems dramatic, but if you look at what rates that are in play today, the increase in customer rates actually is not going to be that dramatic. Our SVCE rate will be about 2% higher. The net effective rate to customer, when you factor in PCIA, the net effective rate to customers will actually be lower by something like 11.5%, and I'll go through those numbers. Revenues is 2 components, load or quantity times price. This load is not changing much. There's some uncertainty, I can talk about it later. But the big driver here is the rate that we get to continue to charge. We have opportunity to continue to remain competitive at a rate that enables us to collect this level of revenues. And the reason the 25% number is so dramatic when you look at it year over year is because if you remember, we had a rate change in March. So for the most of a good 6 months or so of the current fiscal year, most of those months we were actually in negative. We were losing money. So when you look at a year-over-year change, the percent increase in revenues is substantial, but the rate impact to customers is not that dramatic, as I'll go into the next slide. Okay, power supply expenses, the same factors that are driving revenues, which is increased power market prices. Revenues, it means PG&E's rates are higher and our PCIA is lower, is also driving our power supply expenses higher. But all in all, when you look at the operating margin, it's a very healthy operating margin. We're looking to contribute, if the projection, the forecast prevails as we presented it in the budget, and I'll talk about the uncertainties, we're looking to add $115.5 million to our bottom line. And transfers and other operating expenses, there's about close to $10 million in new funding for programs. There's another $2 million or $1.9 million of nuclear allocation that we discussed with the board in June. That's part of that. And another part is we're proposing. I didn't talk about the discount in revenues. In this budget, we're proposing a 3% effective discount for customers, 2% to all customers, and 1%, which is about $3.6 million, translated into a dollar bill credit for Carefare customers, which spread over 12 months would amount to about $10.50 for Carefare customers, all low-income customers. And I'll talk about the discount as well, the next slide. So this is the high-level overview of how our numbers are looking. We'll go to the next slide. So revenues, PG&E, as part of the process, they do a preliminary rate forecast in May. Relative to that rate forecast they did would actually result in lower margin than what we're showing. But PG&E used outdated numbers. Their timing was using a March market prices, and since March, market prices have moved something like 20%. So we, as we did in the past, use new gen model to project our revenue, what the PCIA will be, and what the PG&E generation rate will be, and therefore what our headroom and our rate. When we calibrate the model, we know that the model overstates revenues, overstates our margins by 10%. And the way we calibrate it is we go back to PG&E's filing and we update for the same market data that PG&E used and see how the model does to predict it. So it was 10% off. So we have adjusted the new gen model for 10% modeling errors. This aligns our revenues closer to the rates that we think PG&E will file in October. So based on PG&E's rate making process, PG&E files this preliminary forecast in May, and they will do an update in October. The CPUC moved the schedule 1 month earlier. In the past, they would do it in November. And the CPUC schedule, if they stick to their schedule, should approve the rates in December. If you remember, they don't always stick to the schedule. And this past year, that rate change didn't occur until March. So this assumes that CPUC sticks to its schedules. And in terms of the discount, I want to say this is for budget setting purposes, the 3% effective discount that we're proposing. What we recommend, as we've done in the past, is time our rate change when PG&E will have its rate change in January. So if the schedule prevails, CPUC sticks to its schedule, we will come back to the board likely in December, when we will have more certainty on what PCIA will be and PG&E's generation rate will be. At that point, we will seek approval for a rate change, and the board at that point can revisit the discount rate. But for right now, the 3% effective discount that we're proposing is for budget setting purposes. That's a key point I wanted to make here. Okay, Andrea, we'll go to the next slide. So here's an illustration. On the left is the points I've already made. You can look at the current rate that we charge customers is about 12.28 cents with 1.88. The effective rate that our customers pay is 14 point something. The new rate on the right side, if the projections prevail, will be slightly higher than about 2% higher. If we give the 2% discount for all customers and the 1% is a bill credit for Carefare customers. There is opportunity. There's room that in December when the board revisits this decision, we can up the discount a couple of percent. There are some other proposals that we are working on. For example, maybe more of a discount for an all-electric rate schedule. We can bring that to proposals to the board. But if you look at the effective rate that customers will pay, one thing, sorry, I didn't mention is if you look at the right side of our projection, you notice that the orange box is missing the PCIA. What happened to PCIA? For the first time, we are forecasting with the high prices that PG&E's, that usually their resources that were above market are actually becoming in the money. They're actually lower than the prevailing market prices. which means PCIA, for the first time, we're projecting it to go slightly negative. And PG&E has a tariff rule that they will not allow for negative overall rates. So we've zeroed out PCIA based on that projection. And that money is not lost. They will basically credit it in the following year's PCIA adjustment. So if you look at the effective rate that the customers are paying with the PCIA and the fact they won't be paying PCIA, the rates are actually, the effective rate would be lower. Okay, we'll go to the next slide. So now the question is how should we set aside money for reserves? And we're proposing to update our reserves policy. If you remember, in June, we did an extensive stress test analysis. And at that time, we laid out a criteria to the board. We said that we want to model some of these adverse events that can really harm us. And we said we were going to use stress test scenario 2. And that scenario was that what happens if prices collapse? We've noticed that if prices collapse, our revenues will come down significantly. If you know the mechanism, the way the PG&E's balancing account works, even though we're forecasting good margins for this current year, these margins are not guaranteed, in the sense that if the realized prices the upcoming calendar year doesn't meet the forecast, in other words, prices come down, they basically get to recover that cost, which means their PCIA charge in the following year could go up much higher. So there's always a year lag effect. So you have to take into account that even though we're projecting good outcome for this fiscal year, it could be all trued up in the following year, where we have to return the dollars in the form of higher PCIA and lower PG&E generation rate. And also, the stress test, models a very plausible scenario, even though it may be extreme. If prices collapse, there's a substantial draw on our reserves. And we're also modeling, you remember, there's a new regulatory proceeding going on that can substantially increase our financial reserve postings to PG&E, who currently is the provider of last resort. They're asking, some calculations indicate upwards of $70 million that we could have to post. So we're modeling the stress test scenario. What we're doing in adjusting our reserve targets is we're saying, if this stress test scenario were to prevail, we want to make sure that we stay above the minimum days of cash on hand of 120 days. We want to make sure we have 120 days in the event we need to, that will give us sufficient time to secure additional financial liquidity, go talk to the banks if this unfortunate scenario were to occur. We will need time to work with the board in devising our strategy. So we don't want to plan for having sufficient reserves on hand that if these scenarios were to occur, we don't dip below 120 days of cash on hand. So that's how we set the reserve target that I'm going to show in the following slide. And then we're looking out over a 5-year projection and how the financial picture will look 5 years from now. And we're saying for the latter 3 years, we want to use the same methodology and target such that our cash reserves don't fall below 90 days of cash on hand if these scenarios were to occur. We want to take the opportunity in good financial years to plan ahead for risks over a 5-year horizon. Go to the next slide, Andrea. So here's the update we will be asking in September for our reserves policy. We're staying with the minimum of 120. The goal or the target, want to increase it based on the methodology that I talked about, 230 days to 285 days, and the upper target from 320 days to 490 days. And just a quick illustration of how the math works. If the stress test event were to occur, in the next fiscal year, the fiscal year 23-24, there would be draw on reserves of about $186 million. So to ensure that we end up with a minimum of 120 days of cash on hand, we need to end 2023 $288 million in reserves. And that equates to 285 days of cash on hand at the burn rate of slightly more than $1 million a day. So this is the same stress scenario, but we just updated it for the budget assumptions using latest portfolio data, using latest market data, and model it over the fiscal year as opposed to the calendar year that was presented for the stress test analysis. Okay, we'll go to the next slide. So in terms of additional expenditure, the discount rate and programs funding, I already talked about it. We're targeting, our goal is always to provide competitively priced and high valued services to our customers. And the funds that we don't need to cover cost of service flows to customers in a form of a discount to comparable PG&E rates. But the cost of service includes funds we need to cover operations, obviously, meet our reserve targets. And that's as we modeled it with our stress test analysis, and to fund our decarbonization programs to serve our value proposition to our customers. So based on those criteria, we think it's a good target. Again, this is for budget setting purposes. The board will have the opportunity to revisit the discount, targeting 3%, 2% for all, and 1% additional for Carefairer customers. And in terms of funding for programs, there's sufficient funding right now. We don't need to increase any more than the additional that the board gave for the double down strategy of 17 million in March, plus close to 10 million from new budget, plus the close to 2 million from the nuclear allocations. There's sufficient funding there that we need time to basically come up with a strategy as to how best to utilize those funds, and then we can revisit the need in March. Okay. So we'll go to the next slide. So the other big category, power supply, close to 90% of our expenses. There's nothing new in this slide that you haven't heard from Monica before. Prices are high, prices are very volatile, and that is driving the increase in our power supply expenses. This takes into account all the latest contract information that we have. The cost of carbon-free energy is high. Resource adequacy requirements are changing, and the prices are very high. In the budget, we're proposing to continue to hedge to our current energy risk management targets. As we discussed in this stress test analysis, we are going to be conducting some additional analysis as to the effectiveness of hedging, given the link to PCIA and PG&E generate that we talked about in the stress test analysis. But there's always opportunity to reduce cost by, for example, if we were not to pursue 100% carbon-free, but we don't think there's a need for that. We can continue with our 100% clean policy to maintain the high value proposition to our customers, and it furthers our focus to 24/7 clean energy goal. That's in our strategic plan. With that, we'll go to the next slide, Andrea. So the other major additional costs, as you can probably figure out, there's growth in all areas of the organization. We're doing things, new innovative things that haven't been done before. In the programs area, we're going from about 2 million spent to about 20 million a year spent over the next 3 years. A lot of increased engagement with local agencies. So we need to staff up, and we're proposing not just in the programs area, but in all areas there's growth, and I'll go into that in detail in the next slide. But a 10 additional headcount, going from 29 full-time employees. The slides you'll see it as listed as FTE to 49. We're also proposing so that a lot of the CCAs are in similar position. They're increasing their headcounts. We're all competing for the same talent pool. We want to remain competitive. So we're proposing some increases in the benefits area that I'll go through in detail. We're proposing to increase salaries to adjust for inflation, and what we're proposing to use is the 6-month rolling average of the San Francisco Bay Area CPI, which is about 5.3%. And we're also budgeting an additional 5% for merit increases. And the other key areas, additional costs, business process optimization listed as BPO there. We had budgeted $1 million in the current fiscal year, but we were not able to utilize the fund in the current fiscal year because we've spent time, a lot of time in evaluating our business processes and a right vendor. And we issued an RFP. We're in negotiations with the vendor. We presented this to the executive committee, I think in May. We're now, we want to bring that contract. Our plan is to bring it to as a consent item for the board in September. We're budgeting about close to $1.4 million. The current budget had $1 million that will be unspent. And the proposal with the contractor is coming close to $1 million. That includes the initial setup costs and the first year's licensing fee. We're budgeting close to $400,000 for contingencies. And legal expenses, as you know, there are a lot of activity in that area. We're budgeting $1.5 million incremental for that. And an area we want to focus on is structured finance as part of our strategic focus area to leverage our balance sheet to look for ways in which we can provide more innovative financing to advance our decarbonization programs, attract DA customers. So we'll be spending some effort there. And we continue to improve our cybersecurity infrastructure and positioning, and we're budgeting $250,000 for that. Okay, with that, I'll go to the next slide that goes into some of the details of the staffing. As I said, big growth in in our programs area. Right now, we're proposing 3. But the note there is, as we're scaling up the programs and as we're gaining more clarity on the type of resources we'll be needing, we'll be in better position in March. We will most likely be coming back for more staffing in this area, given the workload. We're also increasing 3 positions in the power resources area, increase compliance requirements, increase data and analytics that's needed to support the number of PPAs that have come online and that continue to come online. We're also putting a lot more emphasis in load forecasting, which we have outsourced for the time being. And similarly, we're seeking 3 additions in our energy services and customer relations groups to support the rate work that we do with our commercial and industrial and the outreach we do with our customers. And in the risk area, we're increasing 1 position right now to support in the mid-office function and mainly in the area of implementation of the business process optimization project. And these are full-time employees. And on the left side, I've noted some of the part-time resources that we have as well. That will go to the next slide. So the benefits, as I said, we want to remain competitive with our peer CCAs. The first item is not actually an increase in benefits. One of the benefits we provide that's very popular is health reimbursement account of $6,000 a year. We don't want the balances, to the extent that an employee is not able to utilize them, we don't want the balances to continue to grow. So we're proposing at a reasonable level of capping it for 3 times the annual amount, or at $18,000. We don't think this is going to have any big impact to any of our existing employees right now. The areas where we're looking to enhance our benefits is cash in lieu of health benefits. Those employees who have alternative means of securing healthcare and decline coverage via SVCE. Currently, we provide 250. We're moving towards the upper end of our peer CCAs, going to 600. Monthly contribution that we provide towards employees' health insurance. Currently, we provide 1,200. We used to provide 1,000. If you remember, in March, we upped it to 1,200, and we said we will revisit it. Since 2017, when we started the $1,000 and the organization, cumulatively, health premiums have increased about 34%. So this is meant to bring it closer to alignment with that, and in range with our peer CCAs to $1,500 a month. And then currently, for employees that use the phone, their own personal phone, we provide an allowance for a credit of $50 a month. We want to enhance that and call it a remote technology allowance. So whether it be for phone use or internet, and we want to up that to $120 a month. And one of the areas that we currently don't provide any benefits is paid parental leave. We are proposing to offer 120 hours of bonding time first year after birth of a child. It's currently offered by MCE and Peninsula Clean Energy. The last item here is to align with our mission. Is currently, we provide programs to our customers, decarbonization, but employees that do not live in our service territory obviously are not customers of SVCE, and they cannot tap into those programs. We want to be mission aligned and have our employees participate in our decarbonization program. So we're setting aside $2,500 per employee, but we think the utilization rate would be something like 50%. So we're targeting about $62,000 for the current fiscal year. So employees who want to, for example, who doesn't live in our service territory, wants to purchase a heat pump water heater, they can qualify those same type of incentives. And we will work out the details of this benefit. But for budget setting purposes, we're setting aside about $62,000 for this. Okay, next slide. And that brings me to the summary. So we're looking at a good year. Again, risks remain. We don't know what PCIA and PG&E generate will be, but we are managing that risk well, because the main factor that would affect that would be our customer discount rate, which we're not going to change until we have more certainty as to what PG&E's rates and PCIA rate will be, likely in December. We're increasing our reserve targets based on the stress test modeling. We're keeping the 1% discount rate until we revisit that decision, likely in December. And then we're strategically increasing in some of the areas to focus on our strategic risks, enhance our operational efficiencies. The BPO project. There's additional information in the appendix. We are dealing with millions and millions of rows of data that are impractical to handle via spreadsheets. We're looking at it on an absolute dollar basis of like 75 million of cash flow we're processing on a monthly basis. A minor incident there can be huge dollars. So a lot of our BPO is, for example, in deal capture systems that we're installing so that we accurately track, monitor our transactions. And then big area in settlements. We can settle with the ISO, California ISO, and with bilateral trades with our counterparties, so we don't have mistakes there or get wrongly billed by either the California ISO or the counterparties. So even a 1 or 2% error rate there can more than pay for the first year BPO, including the implementation fee. Next, is there another slide, Andrea? I think, or is that it? I think that's it. Oh, with that, I am open for questions. And we look for your feedback. Next steps is to incorporate your feedback and seek your approval in September. And again, we will likely seek the CPUC sticks to its rate making schedule. We will seek our rate change in December. And then again, we will have an opportunity to adjust the budget in March. And with that, I'm open to questions.
Okay. Thank you, Amrit. Obviously, very dense bit of information that the board is being asked to comment on. So this is the draft proposal, and staff has put together a series of, I'm going to say, what Amrit said was that this is full of assumptions that the board can adjust when we know more concretely what PG&D is going to be doing with the PCIA and the rates. So like some of our cities, you know, we all make assumptions about our sales tax revenue or our property tax revenue or our transient occupancy revenue. For Silicon Valley Clean Energy, it's a commodity that we don't have as much control over, and the predictability is pretty wild. So over this last year, certainly over the last 3 or 4 months, staff has really tried to put together the risks and what decisions that the board can make with a sense of managing the risk. And that's where the stress tests came in so well. I mean, I thought they were just incredibly marvelous information for us. So all of that work over the last year, and certainly the last 3 or 4 months, is come together for staff to put together a budget. So we got information on assumptions about the rates, some assumptions about where we're going to go with what we think we're going to do with the PCIA. We've got some information from the stress tests about our reserves. That's a big change also. And then there is some information about staffing and benefits and all the other types of expenses that are part of the cost of doing business. So this is a good time to ask questions from the board. We'll take public comment and then come back for some discussion. So to begin with, do we have some questions on what Amrit presented? I don't see any hands raised. Yes, please. Director Willie.
Yeah, thank you, Amrit. Since we previously talked about the discount rate, and I was asking about Peninsula Clean Energy, did you show that slide? I came in late, and if you did, could you pop that back up there? I mean, it kind of helps to have the visual.
Yeah, Andrea, that's slide 26.
Oh, that'd be great.
No, I did not share that. That was in the appendix.
Okay, great. So in general, so I attended a youth climate change meeting that they had, for which Peninsula Clean Energy actually gave a presentation, and which kind of caught my attention that they're at a 5% discount rate. And so we talked with Amrit about that at the pre-meeting, and now I've thought about it some more. Do we, or could we, be looking at how they're able to get the 5% and we're down at 3%? Is there something that they're able to do beyond us, or can we somehow move in that direction? And that kind of brings me to the question that I didn't ask earlier, and that is, do we think at some point in time we'd be able to get to that 5%? A year from now, 3 years from now? Or is there some fundamental thing that we just can't get there?
I can respond to that. We definitely can get there even with this current proposed budget. If we want, we have room to go to 5% discount rate. If we go to 4% discount rate, then our current rate, the blue box I was showing in the chart, would remain the same. So the question is, what is more meaningful for our customers, and how can we better serve the objectives of the organization? What we've targeted is, we think 3%, 2% is a meaningful discount for all customers, with 1% additional for Carefairer customers. That translates to $10.50. So that's a very, very good discount for them. And then that keeps a healthy reserves for the risks we're modeling, as well as it gives us flexibility to target funds in programs area, which is basically also providing value to our customers, but also aligned with our value proposition and mission of the organization. But there's nothing here that financially that I can say prevents us, the board, from offering a 5% discount. And again, the board doesn't have to make that decision now. Make it in December.
Yeah, so I wouldn't want to prompt anything that maybe would make it less secure for us. And so I'm just kind of looking down the road mostly. I mean, if the amount that they're able to put into their reserves per capita is less than us, are we going to get to a point where our reserves are built up enough that we're on par with them? Or is it really a different issue that causes the difference between what we can give and they give? And that kind of then prompts the question that I'm really interested in. And the inclination that I would have is that the bigger the discount, the more people that will want to come as customers. And so if the discount is less, maybe they're not so quick to jump. Do we have any idea that our customer base, because that means we're going to have more people using clean energy, do we have any idea that if we were to increase that discount, that we would see a growth in our customer base by 1, 2, 3%?
So
are we kind of looking at that? Yeah.
Yeah, I'm going to say it's not going to have much of an impact if we up the discount. Now, if we go if we go higher than PG&E, yes, because we have a good sized commercial industrial load that will be very sensitive to price. But to the extent we still remain competitive and providing a better value, I think those customers have no reason to opt out of us. And our customer participation rate is very stable. It has been close to 95%. So unlike most of the other CCAs, we have one of the highest customer participation rates.
Great. I think that really kind of enlightens me from what otherwise was kind of a big question, 5% discount rate, and maybe that would help us to grow the customer base. But if that's pretty much already pretty large, then I can understand. So thank you.
Yeah.
Thank you, Director Willie, for that question. Director Elahi, I see your hand.
Yeah, thank you. And if you can leave that slide up, I mean, those are really good questions. And it's and thank you, Amrit. I think this is quite a task to juggle all these balls and try to figure out what's going on. And we kind of tie ourselves to the PGI, whatever PG&E charges, and say, okay, we'll charge 2% less. But you're doing more than that, I know. And I think part of the analysis it has to eventually be, what is it really costing us, and what do we need to charge for it? Because I mean, that's how most businesses mark up their product, and I guess, and also it depends on the marketplace, I suppose. So I don't know. I think you probably have all the variables figured out, except for what the PG&E is going to charge, what the PCIA is charging, and I don't know if you are able to do an analysis, forgetting that PG&E exists, and see what is it actually going to cost us, except, for whatever energy we are producing, and what is our break even based on our cost analysis to deliver 1 megawatt of electricity. I don't know if you've done that analysis, or is that or can that be done independently of whatever PG&E charges, so we know what our break even point is?
We do, and so this was mentioned in one of the slides. I think in other cost slide, we try to our rates to reflect cost of service, but in reflecting cost of service, we make sure that remain competitive, and because not competitive may have some consequences in terms of customer retention. And then we also look at, cost of operation. Can we cover our operations? Then we look at reserve targets. That's not an outright cost, but we're planning for risks that our business faces. So do we have ample reserves to withstand the risks that the organization faces? And then the third element we look at is, do we have good funding for our decarbonization programs? So I would say it is a cost basis, but we don't, for example, the fiscal year up until March and the prior fiscal year, we were operating at a loss. So we knew we were not covering cost of operations, but we wanted to remain competitive with PG&E, and we chose to offer a 1% discount rate.
All right,
So
yeah. That's great. Yeah, and I think you almost have to do that. So I'm glad to hear you're pushing it off, because some of it is variable given everything else that's going out in the supply side of this equation. So I'm glad you're doing it. The other question that was raised is, when comparing with Peninsula Clean Energy, that slide shows a net position of 166 million for us and 180.8. What is that? That's what's the reserves right now? What is that number?
So that's basically a balance sheet the 166 was at the start of this current fiscal year.
That's what
and the timing of our fiscal years are different, so that can have a big impact on this. And I don't know when Peninsula Clean Energy started. They may have started earlier than us, so they had more opportunity to build. So there are little factors like that can affect the comparison here.
Yeah, and it isn't entirely fair just to for us to hold one energy company out and say, okay, well, they're generating more. They can give a bigger discount, and their staff is 10% less, because there's always we could always be looking at Clean Power Alliance, which has a minus 17%, and they're running at a loss, or MCE, which is running at a 15% loss. So it's I mean, we can compare them just for getting some idea, but it doesn't give the whole picture. So you guys are doing a great job by doing your deep dives and constantly looking at that. So keep it up. Thank you.
Thank you.
Thank you, Director Elahi. Are there any other questions from the directors? I do not. Oh, I have to remember to look in the room. Director Tyson. Fine.
Thank you. Can you hear me okay? Okay. Well, thanks for that presentation. I know we're doing questions now. We'll do reactions later, right? And so I think what you've highlighted there, Amrit, is the nature of the risks and how we're trying to look a little bit long term. And I think it's instructive to us that we saw what happened last year, where through no real change in our operations, we're running at a loss. And so we hold the line to do that. And I think that reminds us we don't want to be in that position any more than we have to. And also note, I think it's 2 CCAs that have gone belly up in recent times. And so this whole strategy of how do we anticipate what are the risks and what control do we have, and realizing we don't really control the lever here. And that big lever is that PCIA, which frankly, as I understand it, is kind of a black box to us. We don't know how it's charged to us. But one thing that we do know is when energy costs are high, that number goes down because then there's less penalty in these old contracts that PG&E hands to us. And what I heard you say, Amrit, was that they don't allow it to go negative. So apparently, as we look ahead, we don't get any rebate on that PCIA, but that I think I heard you say that it's held in some reserve or account and comes back to us.
Yeah.
So where I'm going with my question is, if the thing we fear most is a sudden collapse in energy prices that suddenly causes our revenue to go down and the PCIA to go up, how important is that cushion that maybe we could be building next year? Is that a very big number or significant? Could it help moderate this? Because the whole thing here is sharp changes can hurt us and ways that, and over time we can adjust rates and control our operations and adjust a little bit, but it's those sharp changes. So how important is the potential for that negative PCIA creating a hidden cushion for us in terms of sudden changes?
We actually model that. So that in the way we develop the forecast, the 5-year projections and the reserve projections, we model that right now we're showing slightly negative, so it's not a big cushion. It's almost close to zero is where PCIA is coming in at the numbers we looked at. But whatever that cushion is gets factored in the fact that it will be in the next year's PCIA. They call it the power balance, or it's a balancing account, basically. So PG&E basically has to target, this is a set revenue I get. If I don't get that revenue, it goes into balancing account as a true up. Now, this will be the first time this would be happen. So there are discussions going on with PG&E as to how they would implement this. It could be that one particular vintage PCIA could go negative if overall is positive. So some of this we have to see how it plays out. But because PG&E just looks at the overall customers, but one particular CCA's vintage may go negative if PG&E's overall PCIA is still positive. We still have to, there's a lot of discussions going on right now as to how this will be implemented by PG&E, because no one was anticipating PCIA to be negative.
In other words, everything's more complicated than I even knew. Thank you.
So just for memory's sake, I think last year we were in the red by 12 million and we utilized our reserves. And that, I think, was part of the impetus to really understand what the risks were and initiated the stress tests. And the result of the stress test is this new recommendation to build our reserves up to whatever the number is on the spreadsheet, specifically because of lessons learned. Am I right on that?
Yes, absolutely.
Okay. Thank you. And I see no other questions, so why don't we go to the attendees, open our public hearing, and we have one speaker on our attendees list, Mr. Bruce Carney, and we will unmute you and look forward to your comments.
Thank you very much, Chair. So as most of you know, I have been attending the board meetings of SVCE for as long as SVC has existed. And I applaud the consistent carbon-free decision that this board and past boards have made. And I also applaud the 1% discount. SVC has a 96 to 97% market share. So to Mr. Director Willie's comment, it's not possible to increase our market share much no matter what we do with pricing. But the organization is now a profitable enterprise, and to sort of cut through the complexity of the presentation, let me just tell you there are only 4 things that you can do with the profits of your entity. You can give the money back to the customers through deeper discounts or other ways of giving it back. You can use the money for program expenses. You can use the money for non-program expenses like putting in business process optimization. and you can use the money to increase the size of reserves. Now, the organization's purpose is to bend the carbon curve. That's what gets me excited. That's what gets other environmental advocates excited. That's why the nearly signed Inflation Reduction Act is such a big deal at the national level. And so I am very, very interested in seeing the program's budget expanded as fast as it can be and deployed in as impactful a ways as the very creative team at SVCE can come up with ways to do it. And so I may be misparaphrasing it, but I believe that Mr. Singh implied that the organization couldn't increase the program's budget terribly fast because that involves upstaffing and it involves implementing new ideas that may not have been fully fleshed out yet. And yet, there certainly was a slide that said we're going to have to increase the program's budget because we're expecting so many more people to need the rebates or want the rebates that SVC is offering. So I would like to ask SVCE if they think it's possible to put itself on a wartime footing, to imagine that Pearl Harbor has been attacked and to, get going doing, not get going thinking about doing. There may be a very limited opportunity when we have a Democratic president in the White House, because the Republicans, frankly, have been extremely active in doing things like saying you can't put new building codes in place that require electrification in new buildings. There are a lot of risks out there that I think the best way to deal with them is to go faster. So I hope that when the board has a chance to vote on this next month, that you will vote for more money for programs, less money for reserves, and go faster every possible time you have a chance to do so. Thank you.
Thank you, Mr. Carney. And I see no other raised hands from the public, so we will bring it back to a discussion from the board. I would take note that I believe staff is doing a very thorough review of the Infrastructure Reduction Act, Inflation Reduction Act, and will be coming to the board with that information. It is dramatic and exciting, and that's the advantage of being able to make decisions at a board level, and we'll see what comes back, I think, at the strategic planning discussions this week and what staff brings back for the work plans in October, as I think opportunities should not be lost, and I think staff is very excited about what will happen next in that regard. So,
yeah, I think Benna Chang provided in the CEO report a summary of what our understanding is of what's the opportunities are in the Inflation Reduction Act. As Chair Gibbons said, it is somewhat monumental and very exciting. We're going to take the next couple of weeks to really digest it and understand how it can impact programs, align with our mission, and even maybe provide value in some of our power purchase agreements that we've done for renewables or we are contemplating doing. There's a lot of good stuff there, along with the governor's budget, which also has an emphasis on climate change. So we hoped, if possible, to bring this item to discussion at the August 26th Executive Committee meeting, where we can perhaps share with you what we understand and take questions and continue to analyze it. And then, as you mentioned, included in our work plans going forward.
So thank you. And I'm looking at the CEO's report in our material. So please feel free to take a look at that. And if you have any feedback for staff from that review, that would be wonderful. So thank you. All right, going back to the budget. Lots of information here. Are there any questions? Because what staff's going to do is come back in September to ask the board to approve the budget with basically the information that's contained herein as presented. And it'll be a simpler presentation. It'll be a summary, a straightforward summary of this. So any questions? And I see no questions at the moment from those in the chambers. I will go to the remote and see if we have any questions from our panelists. I see none. And with that, I think this is a discussion. And are we going to be asked to make a motion on this one? Is this just discussion? It's just discussion.
Correct, it's just discussion only.
Just discussion. Okay. Well, I've heard it a couple times because of the various committees, and I'm very, very appreciative, as I'm sure all the board is, of the level of incredibly detailed, thorough, important research and information that all the staff used to put this together, as has been said by several board members. So thank you all, and we look forward to the budget coming back in September for board approval. Yes, sir.
I believe we were going to have a point of having discussion or feedback or comments, that they were looking for feedback rather than just questions. So I was.
Oh, that was what I was trying to do, and I didn't see any hands raised, so please.
Oh, okay. See, you were asking for questions again, so that's what I thought you wanted. So
sorry.
So let me just fling it out there and say that I saw this earlier in the ROC meeting, and so I would say I don't see anything that I disagree with. How's that? In terms of the budget, I think it looks very sound. I do appreciate the reserve plan. I do hear Mr. Carney's comment, and to a certain extent, how much better can we do by going faster? Can we outrun our horse? Is that the right expression? And so I feel like over time, the PCIA will become less and less significant to us. We'll be more and more masters of our fate, is my understanding of how it works. And so I feel like we should take this advantage to build the reserves. I do like the increase in the discount, but I also recognize I'm not sure how strong a discount lever is really in terms of changing behavior. And so I don't think it really helps us to have a very giant discount that we can't sustain. Certainly, there's a big factor in not having a surplus and sending more of that emotional or stake in the ground kind of message to say we're cheaper than PG&E and we're going to continue to be. And then while we're getting our house in order and while PG&E is getting their house in order, then we'll be better positioned maybe to expand those programs that we've heard about, as well as other things we haven't thought of yet, and see how we can maybe link up with the Inflation Reduction Plan, tie into it and leverage that in ways that hasn't been passed yet. But I think we can learn from that. So in short, I'm just saying, good job, staff. I agree with your decisions on the budget and the discount and the reserve strategy.
Thank you. So just to be clear for everyone, is there a discussion comment? And I see Director Elahi's hand is raised.
Yeah, I guess as discussion start, things come to my mind. There was one point I had brought out earlier, and which was like the Maytag repairman commercial used to be where the guy was just sitting home not doing anything because the washers worked so well. And I look at the energy company, a clean energy company, as a company that really should go out of business at some point in time, because everybody has their own solar energy. They have their own little wind turbines, and I saw some little wind turbines you can put on your house. So all the electricity is generated in-house, and you don't need all this transmission and everything else. So I don't know if the Inflation Protection Act or this new act is going to give us some means of doing it, but I would like us to start looking in that direction to see how we can help people generate their own energy right at home, so we don't have to be spending money buying energy. And this could be obviously a 20-year or 50-year project, but I think some steps should be taken towards that, because everybody who can generate their own energy, there's one less generation that has to be done out there. So I would ask the staff and probably invite input from the board as to whether this is something we should also be looking at, not just how to generate clean energy, but how to just do it right at the source where it's being used.
Thank you. I think the idea of putting ourselves out of business is pretty darn enticing.
Well,
anyone else with comment? Okay, seeing none, Then we will close this discussion. Okay, thank you very much. And we will now go to the next item on the agenda, which is the new construction reach code update.
Yes.
And I think that's going to be Zoe.
Yeah, it's our Deputy Director, Zoe Elizabeth.
Yeah.
Good evening. It's wonderful to see you all again after a month off. I know you're all going to closed session. My update will be quick. Andrea, you can go to the next slide. So I'm just going to provide a quick status update and highlight some upcoming actions. So we are in August now, which means that we're moving towards the key times for your work, which on voting on new construction reach codes. So even though this is quick, we want to make sure your attention is here. And if there are any needs that you all have or that you know your staff has, that you know that we are available to support you all along the way over the next several months. You all made great strides in 2019, and we want to just really make sure that we maintain that those benefits of electrification coming to your communities. Next slide. So this is you may recognize this from June when we presented, right, just giving an update of all of the actions that have been happening. You can see here that Los Altos Hills, in addition to the cities that have been using our efforts for community outreach, also did additional community outreach. But what I realized is I want to make sure that what might not be clear from this slide is that we are actively working with all 13 of our jurisdictions. Over July, I think that we had email communication with staff from all 13 jurisdictions. Many of those jurisdictions, we also had direct meetings with staff and meetings with community members. Being able to present to the West Valley mayors and managers meeting. We had, again, these direct one-on-one meetings, and Gilroy and Los Gatos both had council information sessions. The key upcoming priorities that we want you to be focused on in the coming months are that the vote for the vote is agendized for adopting whatever reach code your community decides on. In some communities, we know that requires 2 readings, and also sometimes that a council information session is required. So make sure that those should be happening in September and October. If you have requests for us to meet with any of your counterparts on your council, we are available to do that. Or if you know that your staff needs additional support, or if there's questions that you're getting from staff that we can support, we're also, of course, always available to meet with you and prep before these vote meetings. Next and last slide, Andrea. So again, this is the handy checklist that we have put forward for you so that you can track your individual progress. So if you want to kind of look at this quickly and say, okay, do I know, are these things done for me? This is specifically board member checklist. And as you can see, what we're moving towards really are these votes, and what we recommend them happening by the end of October. What that also means is that this is the period where your staff will be doing a lot of work on writing the actual code and figuring out a lot of the technical details. It's a time that we want to just make sure nothing slips up and there's no miscommunications and there's no lack of hold up in timing. So we're here to support you. We think everybody's moving forward, and look forward to the next couple months of hustle as we get to October. And that's my last slide.
Thank you, Zoe. Are there any questions of this presentation and update on the reach codes? I don't see any questions from those in the room, and I don't see any raised hands. We'll go to the public comment portion. And I see no comments from the public, no raised hands. Thank you. We will bring it back for a discussion. And I don't think this is a motion, an item requiring a vote. It is for discussion as well. Is there any discussion on the presentation? Yes, ma'am.
Thank you, Chair. I just had a question that came up. If I remember correctly, do the cities need to vote on maintaining their current reach code? So even if there's no change, we need to see it on our agenda before October 31st. Is that right?
That's right. And it's, you know, usually part of the triennial state building code update process. So the easiest way to do it is probably to do it at the same time as you adopt that state code. And the reason being, right, the code changes every year, so you just need to make sure that your code language is against the newest code.
Okay, great. Thank you. I want to make sure that we have that on our upcoming agenda items. Thank you.
Thank you. Any other comments? I think that takes care of the agenda, formal agenda for this evening. We will now move to any board member announcements, and then we will, as I mentioned earlier, move to a closed session. We have 3 items on the closed session, and then we will come back to this meeting to announce any action, if action is taken on any of those items. So do we have any wonderful, exciting things? Director Chua always is very good at coming up with exciting ideas. Anyone else?
Yeah, Montecito has its annual picnic on August 21st at noon at the Mosona Park. You're all invited. If you want to join in, please let me know so I can save a seat or a standing place in the park for you guys. So it's usually a pretty good event. It's all free, so you get food and barbecue. And I think Silicon Valley Clean Energy might be hosting a booth there.
Oh, thank you.
You guys decided to do that, Zoe?
So thank you very much, Director Lai. When is that again? The date?
August 21st, Sunday.
And what time?
It's from about noon to 2 o'clock or so.
Okay, thank you very much for that invitation. I think I saw Director Klein's hand next, and then Director Chua.
Sure. And I just wanted to point out that there was a great Mercury News article last, I think, Saturday on Sunnyvale's new City Hall, which will be LEED Platinum, but most importantly, net zero, thanks to funding from SVCE. But it went pretty much in depth on kind of the new features. We're tearing down multiple buildings and building a new 4-story building, which then gives us about 6 acres of open space that goes along with that. But the big thing, of course, is it's net zero. It's, you know, the solar panels started going up last week. And, you know, part of that is with additional funding coming from SVCE. Good picture of Girish, myself, and the city manager in that article. So definitely, if you get a chance, take a look. But that will, city employees will be moving in December. So not that long from now, that building will be finished. So anyway, thank you very much.
I'm green with envy. Director Chua.
Thank you, Chair. And I just want to share, a few weeks ago, Congressman Rokana visited our city hall, visited us. So to give update, as you know, we asked for, he went around and asked us different cities for projects that he might be able to persuade other assembly members, congressmen to approve. And I'm happy to announce that we asked for $3 million to electrify about 200 homes. And we got an update last night, actually yesterday, from Mr. Pike's Tom, and Tom emailed us and said it's been approved at the House. So hopefully it will get approved sometime in the fall. So yay. So I'm not saying you guys can do it too. So yay. So I'm so excited and looking forward with this Inflation Reduction Act. Maybe we can get some funding there too. We'll see. So please when you see something from Congressman Rokana and ask for some projects, do it because it happens. So thank you all. I just wanted to share that with everybody.
I knew we had to count on you to say something. You're 3 for 3. Thank you and congratulations. I hope that works out as the fall vote comes around. Well done. And I think that's Director Martinez Beltran.
Hello, good evening. Yes, I wanted to say that this past weekend was the Children's Business Fair. And my girls were slated to be in it, but we had to go away unexpectedly for the weekend. But I thought it was a really interesting opportunity for us to look at being involved in that. If we could somehow be involved, these children's fairs happen in different cities. And I think it would be a great opportunity for us to talk about maybe them looking at doing some environmental climate change, carbon reduction, just get some ideas going out there. So I'm interested in doing something with children, but I thought I'd bring it up and give some food for thought to staff. We'll also this month, at the end of the month for Women's Equality Day, we'll have 2 events. One will be a women's walk and open mic on the 26th from 4:30 to 6:30 in downtown Morgan Hill at the Grange. And then also on Saturday, we'll have a brunch from 11 to 1:30 with a panel on impacts of overturning Roe. And that's going to be from 11 to 1:30, also in downtown at the Morgan Hill Grange. And that's what I wanted to share. Thank you.
Thank you. Thank you so much. Morgan Hill always has some great community events, so that's wonderful. Thank you. I had one thought, which is a lot of communities have summer concerts or other kinds of summer events. Every week they'll do something. And at the Cupertino Earth Day, Silicon Valley Clean Energy provided some innovative power sources from solar. And I think it would be marvelous if one of the things that we could do is expand the engagement of Silicon Valley Clean Energy to community events providing power from solar as opposed to all these generators and everything else. So that's another food for thought kind of idea. Yes, ma'am. Director Abikoga.
Thank you, Chair. I had an item I wanted to share as well. It's actually a thanks to SVCE staff. Our Mountain View's Chief Sustainability Officer sent me an email this afternoon that there's a partnership with SVCE, our City of Mountain View, and the City of Milpitas to develop a few concepts for submission to the Metropolitan Transportation Commission's Transportation Electrification Program call for project ideas. As some of you know, I serve on the MTC Commission, but this was a call for projects to solicit ideas on how to accelerate and expand access to electric mobility options. And the concepts that were developed were in 3 areas: municipal fleet electrification, EV charging infrastructure in multifamily complexes, and workforce development for EV charging infrastructure maintenance. I think it had to be a municipality that submitted, so Milpitas and Mountain View split these projects and represented the partnership. And so this is, we will continue to monitor the progress of this program. The hope, I guess, MTC is anticipating developing $40 to $60 million in funding programs to advance the electrification in the region. So hopefully, even though I guess it doesn't put us for first in line by submitting ideas, but at least we'll be in the mix, I think, and hopefully there will be some funding opportunities for our area. So I will keep you posted. Thank you.
Another fantastic piece of information, and I'm green with envy on that one too. All right. Anyone else? All right, so we will adjourn. What's the ratio? I can adjourn this meeting to an executive sessions, and we will return with any report out. So this Zoom meeting link will remain open for returning, and we will have a separate Zoom link for the executive closed door executive session. Okay. Thank you. All right. Good evening, everyone. Thank you for coming to our meeting and hanging in with us as we have completed our executive session closed door. There was nothing to report out on, I don't have that in front of me. Let me see if I can read it out. Let's see. There is nothing to report out on item 1, conference with legal counsel, existing litigation. Name of the case, Central Coast Community Energy and Silicon Valley Clean Energy versus Big Bear Solar. There is nothing to report out on the second item, conference with legal counsel, anticipated litigation. Litigation in pursuant to paragraph 4 of subdivision D of section 54.956.9, one potential case, and nothing to report out on the public employee performance evaluation of the chief executive officer. And is there anything that anyone else has to say before we adjourn? We are adjourned to our next regularly scheduled meeting of September. Thank you all. Appreciate it.
Good job.
Good night.
Good night.
Good night.